So having established that Trump's situation is unraveling, getting worse and worse as a result of multiple planets in his chart challenging him and pushing him back, namely Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Eris, all of that is in play. However, we can add another very interesting factor in here when we look back at the last couple of weeks, specifically the last week of January, and especially once we get into February, because Mars entered Capricorn at the end of January, and then as we get into the beginning of February, it enters into those degrees that trigger what I have called in the past his Access Hollywood T-square, which is formed by Neptune, Mercury, Eris. And the reason I called it that is that back in October of 2016, when Mars was in Capricorn in these very degrees, it triggered the T-square concurrent with the infamous incident on the Access Hollywood bus, in which he was heard to say some, let us call them, really unsavory things. And we know this area is difficult for him because whenever planets go through there, he gets really uncomfortable. This is the second time that it's been through there following that Access Hollywood incident in 2016. 2 years after that, in the spring of 2018, it crossed through those degrees, concurrent with the firing of Rex Tillerson, who had called him an effing moron, if you remember that. But more importantly, right around early April was when Michael Cohen, his ex-lawyer, was raided by the FBI, which really upset Trump and led to all kinds of problems for Trump in the ensuing years through the actions that Michael Cohen has taken. So we know that he doesn't like these degrees. And so now here we are, 2022, Mars is cruising through there, and what do we see happen? All kinds of things in the last 10 days or so, but most importantly would be his ex-partner, Mike Pence, rebuking him. And then we heard about the shredded records, the fact that he was shredding records while in the White House, and that he even took some of them to Mar-a-Lago, and that the National Archives had to go over there to retrieve them. So essentially he was breaking the law. And now today, Mitch McConnell is essentially agreeing with the point of view that January 6th was indeed an insurrection and not legitimate political discourse or anything else that Trump and those in the GOP that follow him want to call it. So basically, it's a very negative period when you can see that the forces are turning against him in the form of actual tangible events. But I'll end by saying that the whole period of Mars in Capricorn doesn't work well for him, because in the early part of the sign, it triggers the Access Hollywood T-square between, say, 5 degrees and about 10, 11 degrees. Then the Mars keeps going, and later this month, it's going to oppose his Venus-Saturn 12th house conjunction, which is going to bring about more problems. And in this case, this is exacerbated, is intensified by the fact that Venus happens to be transiting together with Mars. So there are going to be two planets opposing at the same time, adding to the intensity of the situation in the negative sense. And if you're wondering what happens after that, nothing good. The chart is downtrending, and we're moving toward a summer period when Jupiter, which is a much bigger influence in his chart, in anybody's chart, it's longer lasting than Mars and more impactful, that Jupiter will be in the Eris degrees of the Access Hollywood T-square, thereby triggering it. But in that case, it's going to trigger it for solidly for approximately 2 months. And it's in the legal house where it's doing it from. So you can probably anticipate what that is going to bring.